Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com in the Overflow Room Annex, here to talk about books. Books on classical music and history of classical music and history more generally and all the kind of stuff that relates to this amazing topic that we are undertaking together. What have we got here? I got a lot of Brahms coming up, I think. There was a point where I was really studying Brahms and getting as much as I could together. But we begin, yes, Brahms is coming. We begin first with this juicy little item, The Orchestra by Paul Bekker. This was written around 1936. This is one of those Norton reprints. And it's really fun. It's a discussion of different types of orchestras used throughout the various periods of classical music and the evolution thereof and how the orchestra is suited to the expression of its epoch. And just to give you a sense of this, it's breezily written, fun to read. It really is. And then, let's see. Lots of juicy history here. And we've got, the titles are wonderful. You ready? We have first, Prelude, a family chronicle, the instruments of the orchestra. So we get to know what those are. The classical orchestra of Haydn, the opera orchestra of Mozart. It's wonderful to make that distinction. I think that's really important because the dynamic between purely orchestral music and theatrical music is an important one that is going to sort of run like a thread through the history of the orchestra. The dynamic orchestra of Beethoven, the Orchestra of Romantic Illusion, Weber, Schubert, Mendelssohn, and Schumann. Romantic Illusion. It's so evocative, isn't it? The Virtuoso Orchestra of Berlioz, Meyerbeer, and Liszt. The Cosmic Orchestra of Wagner. Yeah. The Decadent Orchestra of Brahms, Bruckner, and Mahler. Interesting putting those three together, isn't it? Brahms, Bruckner, and Mahler. The National Orchestra of Verdi, Bizet, Smetana, Tchaikovsky, and Sibelius. The Art for Art's Sake's Orchestra of Strauss, Debussy, Puccini. And the Mechanistic Orchestra of Schoenberg, Stravinsky, and the present time. Now, one of the things that I find particularly interesting about this is that, as is so often the case, especially until we got to the present time, is the resoundingly Germanocentric approach. There were orchestras elsewhere, and they were different. The opera orchestra in Italy, for example, the Bel Canto Orchestra, Verdi's orchestra, was very differently constituted from some of the German orchestras. And he says nothing about them. And until he gets to the 20th century, you don't hear a word about France. But France had glorious orchestras under Rameau, for example, the Baroque French orchestra, which was wonderful, wonderful thing. And he says nothing about it. And it says something, I think, very significant about what the prejudices were back in the first half of the 20th century, especially in English-speaking countries, where everybody went to the Leipzig Conservatory to learn to write music like Mendelssohn did, and you had to go to Germany, and that was it. And musicology was German, and Bekker was German. So, it's useful for what it does, but what it does is not the whole story by any stretch of the imagination. Then we got Michael Musgrave, who appeared in one of our last videos with the Brahms Reader. Well, now we have the music of Brahms. This is a wonderful introduction to Brahms' music. It really is. It's such a turn-off, the quote at the back. A valuable textbook for actual or potential teachers and students at university level. Whoa, there's a buzzkill, isn't it? Goodness gracious, who cares? First published in 1985, the music of Brahms laid a fresh emphasis on the vital role of Brahms' studies and performances of earlier music, on the formation of his style and musical ethos, which is absolutely the right approach to take, because Brahms was a brilliant musical scholar, and he had a knowledge of early music that was really second to none and very, very eccentric in his own time. Once regarded as providing evidence of musical conservatism, the remarkable scope of his knowledge of music of periods distant from his own and the range of the stylistic sources which he drew together now seem progressive from the vantage point of the historically oriented culture of the late 20th century. So in details of his compositional technique also, he was far more influential on his successors, especially Schoenberg, of course, than was until recently fully acknowledged. So there you go. I mean, it's maybe a little bit, well, university level-ish, but still very much worth reading. And if you love Brahms and you care about his music and you really want to know more from a scholarly point of view, Musgrave's your guy. So that's definitely worth considering. Then we have a wonderful series of essays on Brahms and his circle. Because Brahms's circle was quite circular. There were lots of people in it, and it was round, like most circles. I'm just kidding. Essays and documentary studies by Karl Geringer. Yeah, I mean, he was a Mahler biographer, too. Let's not forget, he was a Viennese guy, Viennese stuff. Revised and enlarged by George S. Bonzarth. And we have 19 chapters. We experience Brahms's conflicted personalities. Oh, boy. See him studying the music of the past, gain insight into his symphonic works and concertos, and encounter him through the eyes of young female admirers. Baby. We can read his private communications from his family and from such figures as Dvorak and Wagner, the singer George Henschel, and music historians George Grove, C.F. Pohl, and Friedrich Chrysander. And we may chart the course of his last days. This is really a serious collection of essays. There's some major stuff here. And let's see what else we may have in here. If we just take a quick peek, because it's so much fun to look through these things. Brahms, the collector of books and music. Well, that's really interesting because he had all kinds of manuscripts. He had, what was Wagner? He had Wagner's Tannhäuser that he managed to get a hold of, and he wouldn't give it back to Wagner. They had a whole discussion about it. It was very funny. Wagner wanted to revise it, and Brahms had the manuscript, and he's like, no, you can't have it back. Ha ha. But that was a fun story. Schumann's Last Years, the picture book of the Ettlinger sisters. Brahms and people, Brahms the symphonist, Brahms Joachim and the two string concertos, The Final Days, correspondence with Brahms, which is very interesting, his correspondence back and forth with all these major musical people, including Dvorak and Wagner. Wagner is getting his Tannhäuser manuscript back, editions of music and stuff like that. So there you go. Yeah, it's a scholarly book. It's an academic book, but it's still for hardcore Brahmsists, definitely worth checking out. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and keep on reading. We've got so much more to come. Take care.